acting surprised that he didn't want to compromise on a system which he said in meeting one that he wasn't going to compromise on. The Pope can't even change my mind is naive at best, right? The fact that he, and there's quotes out there that he was going to evolve. I definitely felt pressure to change it. They knew what they were getting, I think, and then to act surprised at the end of it is odd.
Jay here of Stretford Paddock, and this is a one-on-one interview. One of our favourite journalists, Nathan Salt, from the Come On Mate. You're part of the furniture now. We've been chatting for a little while now, and I think we first spoke to you. You were in Portugal. Ruben Amorim, I think, had been announced as the United manager, or it was rumoured announced.
It was in the mix, wasn't it?
Mix.
I went for what we thought was his last game.
As sporting manager. So me and you spoke, you were literally in the ground, and we had a chat on Zoom about Ruben Amorim, about what he would bring to United, about how he would play at United. You knew the system, you knew what he liked to do. Obviously, he's lost his job now, and it seems like the club, for a multitude of reasons which we'll get into, just felt it wasn't working anymore. Just, if we can just roll it back, when he was announced and when he was appointed, you thought this could work?
Yeah, I was excited. I mean, I think I was on here talking up, giving it the big one about how good it was all going to be. Yeah. And I mean, if you're not doing that when a new manager gets announced, I think that's a little bit miserable. You want to be excited as a fan, and whoever the next permanent boss is, I'm sure I'll be, hyping that person up and trying to bring a bit of positivity. I would do that with anyone, really, with any manager that comes in. And definitely the feeling was, I mean, like I said at the time in Portugal, people were in tears that they were losing Ruben Amorim. This is a disaster. And remember that he didn't want to leave mid-season, right? They basically begged him and said, please, it's now or never. You've got to come. Barada, Wilcox, etc. Barada particularly was the one pushing for Amorim. And, kind of the whole spiel about, you'll be able to build out your vision here. We love what you've done. You'll be able to build out your vision. And then you get to Leeds and it's this spectacular blow-up where I think he just signed his own exit, basically. I think Amorim knew the way it was going and decided to nuke everything with that press conference at Leeds. I couldn't believe it, sat in the room there. But yeah, going back to the start, I just think it's a shame. People know I've been on here. I do like the manager. I did like the head coach, I should say. I'd say manager. That was the whole part of the problem, wasn't it? I did like the head coach. Did like Amorim as a person. I do think it's a shame when a manager gets sacked. I think there's spend too much time on social media, you see people celebrating these things, and there's anything to celebrate. It's the club's got it wrong, and that's not something to rejoice over, I don't think.
No, I agree. Even though I had my doubts about Ruben Amorim, I always want a United manager to succeed. I think it's idiotic as a United fan not to. You might not agree with everything they do, but you want them to win. You always want United to win. You always want the manager to do well and win trophies. It just wasn't happening. If we can sort of fast forward massively then, you mentioned the Leeds game. You'd written and spoken about how things weren't great before the Leeds game in terms of the relationship with Ruben Amorim and some of the others at the club. What was going on there? Yeah,
I mean, I'd been kind of getting grumblings that it was all coming to a head, and people did not like that on the Friday, but by the Monday, people
talk about redemption, Nate. You went from being sort of someone who was getting absolutely hammered on social media to someone who was getting praised within the space of 24 hours.
I was getting hammered to the point where I eventually decided to change my profile picture because that picture was so outdated. I needed a new one for people to abuse me over, so I was like, let's just change that up now. So that's been changed. If anyone hasn't seen my avatar, it's a different one now. So thank you for that. Mild bullying will work, and I changed my picture. But on the Friday, I wrote, I think one of the biggest bones of contention was, particularly at the club as well, they were fuming about this, is that I put in about the Christopher Vivell WhatsApp message after the Fulham draw. So I think I remember United playing Fulham, they should have been like 2-3 up in the first 10 minutes. I think Cunha has a great chance.
Has a really good chance.
United started great.
Missed a penalty, of course.
Yeah, missed a penalty. That was the one where Bruno gets bumped and so United should have just had that game, and also this has come after the Arsenal game where they played well, ultimately lost, but again thought they played pretty well there.
No, I agree with that.
And Fulham played well, and then it unravels. But specifically, a very, very good source said to me that the comments made by Marco Silva after the match and Iwobi, did not go down well with people, because they basically, Fulham explained that they knew exactly how Man United were going to play, and it was very easy for them to counteract. They knew if they just did this and this, there would be no answer. United weren't going to change, and we would get something. Now, there was some pushback that, well, Fulham only drew the game, and if they knew that, why did they even go behind, right? If it was that easy, why didn't they win the game? Understand that. But basically, those comments were put into the Inner Circle WhatsApp channel. Now, I can understand the scepticism of how does he know what was in the WhatsApp channel. I'm telling you that there was no pushback about the validity of that fact, that it was put into the WhatsApp message. Whether you want to say that, one version that they were angry about the comments, or one was, the pushback was they just shared the comments without any context. I mean, whatever side you want to say, the comments went into that internal WhatsApp group about the style and how easy it was to figure out what Man United were doing. And I was kind of getting grumblings that there was a few different issues. Obviously, you've documented it on the channel already about transfer policy and butting heads with Wilcox about system, and obviously a lot has come out since then. But yeah, on Friday, I kind of went quite big on, obviously the Mail had their pull out, I went quite big on things are coming to a head, and then obviously by Monday, unfortunately, it was proven right. I really did want it to, if United had gone and won the Leeds game and Amorim hadn't said anything, is he still in a job? Probably. I think now we're hearing that the decision was already made. I still think if there was no final answer, credit James Ducker for the question, because you got him to give the one of the headlines of the season, really the quotes of the season. Without that, I think he probably is still in a job at Burnley and maybe beyond. So I didn't take any satisfaction out of being right, but there is always that temptation to go back to people that are dragging you. But I decided to just put the phone down and leave it be.
I mean, it's become really, even by United standards, divisive and toxic over Amorim, or it had become, I should say now, so back in the past tense. But there was those that really backed the manager and wanted the manager to succeed, which I get, and was sort of annoyed or angry at anyone that was questioning him or putting out stories that they felt undermining him or whatever. And then you had the other side of it where people going, finished 15th, lost the cup final to Spurs, lost to Grimsby, lost at Unsweather, and all the rest of it. I don't need to labour the point. So it has been a bit of a weird thing. And just on the Fulham game in particular, that really annoyed me, the Iwobi and Marco Silva thing, because I agree with what you sort of pointed out there, where it was like they were acting like they beat us 5-0 or something. They were wasting time at the end. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like this is how you beat United, even though we didn't beat them. Like, bore off. What was it like then with Vivell? Because we've heard a lot about Amorim and Wilcox, and we can get to that in a minute, and also, obviously, Barada and even Ratcliffe. Vivell's someone that's not gone under the radar, but not spoken about as much in these conversations that we're hearing, or these reports that we're seeing. What was the relationship like between Vivell and Ruben Amorim?
See, there are certain club sources that say they did have a good relationship, or they'd become much closer in recent months. But again, you have to take on all sides. You have to take things with a pinch of salt to a degree, because one person will tell you one thing, but I don't think they were super, kind of divided in their kind of relationship. But you got to understand that by the end, everything had become strained. The hierarchy felt like it wasn't going to improve, and I think they'd kind of lost the appetite for the system that they were, running to Portugal to get Amorim to bring to Manchester. So I think that they had just accepted that this isn't what they wanted anymore. You've had other people on talking about Ratcliffe, wanting to go to a back four and all these other things, and I just think they realised that they'd made a mistake. And they didn't want to invest any more money into Amorim to allow him to build it out. I've written that, the way Amorim looks at it, and I know sources close to the manager were very disappointed about the transfer window, and they, not getting. He wanted a midfielder in the summer, didn't get the midfielder invested in the strike force, and obviously United have scored a lot more goals this season. Goals have not really been the problem. Wanted Emi Martinez, didn't get. The club decided to go with Lomans. Obviously Sesko, Vivell was lobbying hard for Sesko. Amorim wanted Nuno Mendes, that was his first choice left wing back option. Obviously Nuno Mendes probably best in the world in that position, stays at PSG. Dorgu is, I think, third or fourth on the list, but obviously you get Dorgu in. So I think people close to the manager are pretty frustrated more about the transfer window than specifically the kind of meddling over tactics, because ultimately, as you saw with the Wolves and Leeds game, yes, he made that change for Newcastle, but he was eventually just going to die on his sword. He had his idea. He was going to stick to his idea from day one to the very, very final game, and he seemed quite comfortable with that. I mean, like, he was smiling, walking out of his house, and he didn't seem too bothered, did he, about, he kind of, and he'll probably go somewhere else and play that exact same system and style, and I don't think Ruben Amorim is going to pitch up somewhere else playing 4-3-3 anytime soon.
No, I agree with that, and I think he's obviously an emotional guy. He wears it out on his sleeve, and you could see he was getting affected by everything. Naturally, anyone would. You could see he wasn't. We've had journalists on it, and I'm sure you can speak to it about his demeanour. I think it might have been the press conference, maybe before the Leeds game, was it?
Yeah,
or where he wasn't.
There's a couple of examples. I think it was after West Ham when he went back at Carl Anka.
Yeah, we know Carl.
Yeah, and I was sat next to Carl, like two down from Carl, and that was seen as like strangely aggressive in that press conference. And obviously pre-Leeds is that one where he's very dour, very sort of sullen, and now we know obviously the meeting and his mood had massively changed that day, and then obviously goes to Leeds and decides to take the pin out of the grenade basically and say what he said. And there were some things in that I think people need to pay attention to. The comment about Gary Neville, the comment about Tuchel, Mourinho, Conte. United are in a situation now where they seem quite content to just go with an interim between now and the end of the season and then get a different permanent come the summer. So for me, that's just, they're not writing the season off, but they're pretty comfortable to wait going into next season to get the guy they want. But I also need to think that they need to decide, what are they getting here? Are they getting more of a Liam Rosenior type head coach that is going to be dictated to, or are you going to get a Thomas Tuchel? Because I can assure you that if you get a Tuchel or Enrique, or just to use the argument, Conte, but based on what, Mourinho, any of those kind of like big managers, Jason Wilcox cannot dictate to those managers or interfere with their. That would just not fly. And I guess the argument people in the comments might say, well, he's not going to interfere with those. They've got proven track record. They have Premier League experience to back it up, titles or whatever, and that's fair enough if you want to say that. But Wilcox's comment that he can't help but interfere, I think, is interesting based on the direction you go. If it is a head coach model, it could easily be Rosenior, or it could be, no, you need to get the best in class and Enrique, and they're two very, very different propositions. So I think it's the huge pressure on the ownership now, because they stuck a lot reputationally on Amorim. It didn't work out. They'd lost a lot of credit in the bank with the way they handled the Ten Hag situation. So I think for Wilcox and Barada, this is probably your final roll of the dice, because you get another one wrong, you'll be gone.
Yeah, look at Dan Ashworth, that as well.
Right.
That's another misstep, isn't it? Whether you can say they get credit for acting quickly. Well, they did appoint him, did spend money on compensation and waiting for him, and then pay him off. And obviously, ultimately, that was a mistake for whatever reason. What have you made of the fact that you brought in a manager, and when we first spoke to you, you spoke about his system, you spoke about everyone who watched Ruben Amorim or seen what he'd done at Sporting knew what he was about. What have you made of the fact that it was so obvious the way he wanted to play, and yet the club didn't want that? The way that unraveled, what have you made of it?
Yeah, I did enjoy on Sky Sports after the Burnley game that the system's not the problem and all that, and like when we've heard nothing but the system for 14 months or whatever. Yeah. So I did enjoy that U-turn. That was very, very funny. But yeah, I think acting surprised that he didn't want to compromise on a system which he said in meeting one that he wasn't going to compromise on. The Pope can't even change my mind is naive at best, right? The fact that he, and there's quotes out there that he was going to evolve. I definitely felt pressure to change it. They knew what they were getting, I think, and then to act surprised at the end of it is odd. But you also, the manager's not blameless, head coach is not blameless. He did make some very odd decisions. Like you say, the Everton game, his game management, his substitutions. I like Amorim, and I can say that he made a number of mistakes. And so I can see on both sides. And like you say, it's very divisive. You defend Amorim, you get accused of all sorts. You go against Amorim, and you get accused of all sorts by both sides. You can't win. You either a manager sympathiser and half of social media think you're talking nonsense, and the other half, think you're talking the gospel, and vice versa. So I think it's somewhere in between. You definite blame at board level. Their meddling, I don't think was helpful. And if they really believed in his idea when they begged him to leave Sporting mid-season, did the transfer strategy match up to where he needed to get it to? Also, you have to look at his decision making, where he was putting players, his decisions in game. Like I say, I think there's blame on all fronts, and I think it's probably a good learning curve for Amorim, because where he goes next, I couldn't imagine another Premier League job, for example, coming around. Does he go back to Portugal? Who knows? So I just think it's a shame. I just think like I say, celebrating a manager getting sacked means that your club has got it wrong. You're not doing well, and I know people think, well, United will almost certainly, they're better off now. They're probably going to get Europe with an interim or whatever. I don't think it's that simple. I think you've got to wait and see. And if they don't get Europe from this position, more fingers are going to be pointed at the board.
No, 100%. Just in terms that you mentioned there about an interim, we know we've got Darren Fletcher for the Brighton game. You also mentioned there about Gary Neville, and there seems to be all the sort of news that we're hearing is that United are going to get an ex-player. It's whether it's Carrick, whether it's Solskjaer. Those are the two main names. It does feel like that way. Do you think this sort of ex-player thing is coming into play here? Is that something that the club are thinking about in terms of, because Amorim mentioned about the pundits and stuff, and Gary Neville, he name-checked Gary Neville in particular. We hear Scholes and Nicky Butt are very vocal, and obviously Gary Neville's got a massive platform. Do you think this is sort of affecting the way the club are thinking about, I don't know, maybe keeping some of those ex-players on board, the pundits on board? I know it sounds slightly ridiculous, but it does feel like it is a thing.
That's my personal opinion, that I think they believe twofold. You get an ex-player in, immediately the fans are rejuvenated, because if it's Ollie or if it's Carrick, either of those, fans will be absolutely behind. I think not so much regardless of results, but I think for a long time you get a lot of goodwill there, and it just kind of flushes out the dissatisfaction, the toxicity between both sides of the fan base, between Amorim and in and out. So I think there's an element of that, but I also think that there was truth to what Amorim said about, I think Gary Neville's comments, I think Roy Keane's comments. I'm not sure about Scholes and Butt, but there's so many ex-United players that are talking all the time and giving their opinions. But definitely like your Neville and Keane and people like that, I think that they've definitely got the ear of the club, and I think they feel their criticism a lot. So if it is Solskjaer, if it is Carrick, I would be very, very surprised if any of those pundits came out strongly against the interim between now and the end of the season. I just would be shocked if there was any criticism similar to what Amorim faced. I would be very surprised, and from the board point of view, they might think, right, that's just buying us 6 months. So in my personal opinion is that they definitely are factoring in a degree of, right, keep that noise down a bit, and the fans are going to be, and just this air of positivity regardless of kind of how it goes on the pitch.
Yeah, definitely. I see that. It's just it's so strange at the minute at United, because it does feel like there's lots of voices, there's lots of people involved. I mean, Sir Jim Ratcliffe's obviously very hands-on. I know he said he was going to sort of let the football people do the footballing side of things, but it doesn't feel like that's the case, does it? It feels like he's got something to say, and he's got a lot of influence as well, which I don't know how productive that is.
He might be an unreal tactico for all we know. I don't know. He might have his own whiteboard, and he might be like a tactical brain we don't even give credit for. But I think that he'd be much better off, devolving power. Really, the best ownership model shouldn't be interfering too much. You're seeing it at Chelsea as well, constantly going into the dressing room, win, lose or draw.
Yeah,
I don't think that's massively helpful. Getting all these different opinions. You hire a coach, even if you want to say the head coach thing, not the manager. So let's just take that at face value. United hire a head coach, and recruitment is left more to, say, Vivell and Wilcox, and more of a club strategy. You have to actually leave the coaching then to the head coach, right? That's their MO.
Otherwise, what are they doing?
If you're interfering in the one thing you're tasking them with, then what's the point? I don't really get. I understand it if you want to sort of take recruitment away from them. We saw the issues with Ten Hag, being able to go and sign the entire SEG stable or whatever he wanted to do. Yeah. So, and we'll see now if SEG gets funneled through FC20. Now he's back there, but if you want to take that away, that's fine. That is a model that a lot of clubs operate with. Managers don't have that same Fergie level control now. It just doesn't happen. But then if you want to interfere in the actual coaching, do you not trust the guy you've appointed? It doesn't make sense to me. You need to believe the guy you're hiring is a good enough coach to coach the players in whatever vision they see fit or whatever you're mandating them to do. Like I say, Ratcliffe said, we will establish the game model in the room. You know what I mean? We will, Wilcox, Ratcliffe, the kind of the shot callers will establish how they want to play. And that's fine. If you establish that through every age group, like I say, I've been on maybe before and mentioned that, I always did dislike the fact the academy and the first team played differently.
Yeah, I agree.
You look at the best clubs, your Barcelonas and co, that they play the exact same way through every age group. It's just an ethos in the club. I don't have that, but if they want to build that, that's fine. But you've got to leave the actual coaching to the bloke you get in, whether that is Nagelsmann, Glasner. I don't know. I think Jamie Redknapp might have done Iraola's PR detrimental damage.
That was I don't know if you've seen that. We were talking about this off camera where Jamie Redknapp was sort of stood in front of a graphic showing that Iraola had, was it 12 games or whatever without any wins.
Baffled
that no one's coming for the guy as a list of losses and draws next to his results is there. Just an absolute.
But you know what I mean? But say that's incredible, that, by the way. But if you get an Iraola, you get a Glasner, you get a Marco Silva who's done really well in terms of they've liked him a lot. You get a De Zerbi. I know De Zerbi's desperate to come back to the Premier League for people close to him. If you get any of those, you hire them because you believe they're the best coach available. So then I think you really need to rethink this interfering strategy. You need to trust the coach, and if you no longer trust them, you've got to get rid of them. That's how it works.
Yeah, there's so many elements to this, and you can understand why Amorim was frustrated and probably felt that this was just untenable. Was the one straw that broke the camel's back, in particular, you think, ahead of that Leeds press conference? Do you think there was one point where it was just like that was it, or is it just a combination of all these things sort of coming to a head?
Yeah, I think it was just a combination. You could see the direction of travel that Amorim did compromise on his system. You know what I mean? He did make the ultimate, not the ultimate sacrifice, that sounds ridiculous, but he did the one thing he said he would never do. So you look like he did sort of show a willingness, and then decided, I'm not going to get back in January. I think it become apparent that he wasn't going to get that money that was earmarked for Semenyo. That wasn't going to be reinvested elsewhere, and he just thought, the way this is going, they're losing faith in me and this project, and I want to go down and fall on my sword like I came in. I want to go down on the back three, and so be it. And like you say, it was kind of a combination of things. I also think he is such a character that he wanted to just basically confirm his own exit. That Leeds press conference just wasn't. He left that press room knowing that the following morning he was going to be walking out of his house, free basically, and paid up.
It feels like that,
not to go full like Jadon Sancho here, but he was going to be free. Yeah. And like I say, that's not without blame. I like the manager. I can like the manager, and I wanted it to work really badly. I wanted United to be successful with him. It wasn't to be, and you just have to move on.
I completely agree, and I think it doesn't have to be so binary. You can look at both sides of this.
But
I don't like it when you do, and you go, look, I like this guy. I could see what he was trying to do. It wasn't quite happening, but I wanted him to succeed. I think that's a
I'm just chronically online, mate. So I just think I like, I'm reading all sorts of just. Some of them. I mean, people are creative. Don't get me wrong, but some of the AI images of Amorim in horrendous situations, looking like some sort of criminal, was quite funny. But also, just that's one of the things about modern football that just is really frustrating. Is that ultimately every United fan wants the team to do well and will back the manager. I think Amorim had a lot of support and had a lot of patience. Actually, I think particularly the match goers, I thought, showed an immense amount of patience.
I mean, there was still. I was there for his last game. I was at Ellen Road, and there was still supporters who. I was just chatting to people ahead of the game, lads I know, and there was a bit of a mixed bag, but there was a lot of fans who were with him. Yeah, a lot of fans who were like, "Look, we're not that far away from where we need to be or expected to be."
But you're a fan of the club, though. I think once you're veering into just being a fan of the manager, that's where these factions appear. And I just think whoever it is, again, now you're going to get the same now. Like if it's Ollie. It might be Ollie and Solskjaer number 2. It sounds like and it's Ollie and Solskjaer number 2, and Carrick is his number 2. Yeah. It sounds like Carrick would be maybe open to that if he doesn't get it as the main guy. I can't imagine it'd be the other way around with Ollie as a number 2 to Carrick. I don't think that's going to happen. Right. So, but let's just say Ollie gets the job. be a lot of people delighted about that, you know, remembering all the good times, Paris and such, City, etc. But then there's going to be people that are absolutely raging and, you know, want it to go horribly wrong. I think you just need to want the team to do well. Like, you support Man United, you just want the team to be successful. I'm eager for United to get back into Europe. You know, can't have another season like this, not just from the financial point of view, but, you know, United want to invest heavily in the summer. One game a week is making it very tough for people to get minutes. Look at Lenny Yoro now. Look at Aiden Heaven earlier in the season. If United go to a back four, what does that mean for Ahmad if Bruno stays? You know, what does it mean for... And I know people say in the comments, well, you have great depth, but one game a week is very tough for players that are worth 50, 60, 70
Well, we've seen
million.
the players, haven't we? We've seen them getting 15 minutes over a 2-week period. We've seen players like struggling, and then the sort of the double-edged sword is you don't get many minutes. Then when you do get 30 minutes or 25 minutes, well, it's taking you a little while to get into the rhythm of the game. You're rusty, and then you're not maybe doing yourself justice or not quite the performance that you want to give, and then you dropped again. It does worry me that, and I do feel like there's been a point where right now you need that depth because we've got AFCON, we've got some injuries, but there's been points in the season where, especially when we're out of the Carabao as well, where players aren't getting minutes. I mean, the obvious one where everyone has sort of flagged up and we've debated and spoken about so much on this channel over the last sort of 5 or 6 months in particular is Kobbie Mainoo.
Right.
Just on the broader sort of scope of the academy, that became a bit of an odd one with Amorim, didn't it? Because this was a manager who'd been, you know, famous giving young players, like 17-year-olds, like regular football at Sporting, was known for someone who was willing to sort of do the old adage at United, you know, if you're good enough, you're old enough. He doesn't sort of care about how old you are if he thinks you can do a job. We saw that last season. This season, not so much. And he had that presser, I think, a few weeks ago where he'd mentioned Cheeto and Amas and Toby Collier, I think, as well. It's like the academy became a bit of a thing with Amorim as well, which was slightly odd.
I couldn't believe it. Obviously, managers have like certain catchphrases they go back to all the time, and one of his absolute favourites was saying that, you know, Casemiro was even below Toby Collier. You know, he kept saying like he's even below him, like, you know, and then he came back. He was trying to say that Casemiro worked his way back up, but Toby Collier was probably sat wherever he was at West Brom and was catching strays left and right on Sky Sports. You probably couldn't believe it. Like, was it even below Toby Collier? But, you know, people behind the scenes were telling me that you know, Amorim was very enthusiastic on the training ground in terms of how he was dealing with Shea Lacey, for example. They had a lot of one-to-one meetings, and you know, Lacey was in and around the first team setup for months. Obviously, I was jumping off my seat when he hit the bar. You know, at Burnley, I thought that was
the best 0.1 second in a long time.
And again, I really, really got quite annoyed when I was seeing the treatment that Jack Fletcher was getting
against Wolves, was it?
Just online, and you know, and you got to understand that
some of that was at the game, you know, Nate.
Yeah, and
like so it was like groans and stuff when something wasn't coming off for him.
So when did he came on against Villa? Difficult to judge that, really. Comes on second half against Newcastle. I don't think United really touched the ball second half. Didn't feel like it anyway.
Felt like bats at all.
Felt like they didn't touch the ball. I mean, I'm not really sure what you can deduce from that particularly. Wolves, he didn't play well, but again, this is a bit of a tangent here, but he was playing alongside Casemiro as a 6. That's where his brother plays, Tyler. You watch the academy, Jack plays as a 10. So where did he play in that game? Played on the right wing, not particularly quick. You know, he's more of a central player, and then he plays as number 6. So you're not platforming the players well, and suddenly now, like, people are saying, you know, Jack Fletcher go to the Vanarama National League or whatever. It's just a load of absolute nonsense. And I know people at the club as well, one of the big gripes is that a lot of these young players are just they're chronically online like me. They're constantly on TikTok and Instagram, and because they're kids, they're young, and all they're seeing is this like barrage of abuse that
it's horrible. It is.
So, you know, I half knew that when I said to people that when Fletcher got the interim job, I said the biggest losers of this are probably his sons, because they're not going to see the pitch now.
Right.
I said there's just no way he's going to play either of those, and obviously Jack gets on the bench, Tyler doesn't even make it. So yeah, you know, for one of the best things about United is this willingness from the fan base to support the academy. They want to. I think the academy does mean a lot more to United than it does to other clubs. You know, promoting is, you know, a badge of honour for United, and yet, you know, recently, just because of how toxic it had become, you know, people are turning on these. I mean, Mantato put one dodgy cross in, and people were suddenly saying he's not good enough. I mean, I've seen plenty of I've seen Dallo and Dogu misplace loads of crosses.
I don't think it was a particularly good ball to him, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
To set him up for that cross. I'll be honest with you.
It's a naff cross, I understand that. But but also, I think...
Sorry, I meant the ball into
Mantato. Yeah.
I thought was a bit of it could have been better. I'm not...
But
and also, it doesn't matter. He's a kid, making his debut, and yes, he's had a bad cross, but what we're doing here...
I just think fundamentally for me, my default setting is I want to be positive. Like, I just want to...
Yeah, I've seen that.
I would like to be positive about the manager. I'd like to be positive about the performances. I don't get any... Like, where's the fun in just, in negativity? It's boring, man. It is, and, people will come on and say, well, journalists will, thrive off United doing badly. It's like, no, it's tiring. I would love to be, covering a European campaign and a title tilt and all these... But it's not the case, because I don't think right now United have a clear vision of what they actually want to do. No. I think they had a vision when they went to Portugal and said, right, we're going to be this back three, we're going to have this sort of this chic manager, and then some point way through that project they've gone, nah, don't want this anymore, don't like this, lost the appetite for this, and it was just getting progressively worse until one of them said, right, I'll just pull the plug on that. And now they're going to go to maybe a 4-3-3, and you're going to have to recruit for that and hope that you have the appetite for that long enough to make it work.
Do you think they have an idea of who they want long term? Because it's very unclear. Even I know, there's always going to be speculation. There's going to be names thrown about. There's going to be names that the fans want. There's going to be sort of popular type managers. Like obviously you mentioned Enrique earlier. Like most people have seen online, I'll be like, oh man, we'll get Luis Enrique. That'd be great. Whether he'd welcome to United. I know we're still a massive club, and we're bigger than PSG and one of the top 5 clubs in the world in terms of the size and the history and everything else. It's a bit of a mess, and you've got this idea that maybe you've got people above you trying to stick the nose in. Do you have any idea who they're looking at or what the plan is? Longer term,
one conversation I had was United adamant that they are going to wait till the summer, take their time. My pushback on that is, if you wanted, to use Jamie Redknapp's example, Iraola or Marco Silva or Oliver Glasner, let's just say they were the top 3 candidates that you wanted. All 3 of those are out of contract in the summer, yeah? If you knew that the guy was one of those 3, why would you not just get him now? Yeah. All 3 of those would move right now, I think. Absolutely. I know, speaking to some people that are sort of in and around Glasner, that he would absolutely love the job. I don't know people around Iraola or Silva, but I would assume that they would be. But I'm saying, say you wanted them, right? I'm not saying they are the 3.
No, I know.
Say you wanted them, why would you not just get them now? United have got a chance to finish in the top 4, and also you're giving a bigger runway going into next season, right? Which makes me think that, are they waiting for a World Cup manager? Are they waiting for Tuchel or Nagelsmann? I'm sure Vivell is very, very keen on Nagelsmann from that Red Bull family. Are they waiting on a Pochettino? I don't know the appetite around the fans for Pochettino now, but for a while, obviously, that was a name that was bandied about for ages. Are they waiting for a World Cup manager? And my feeling is that they probably are. Because if you wanted Iraola, Silva, Glasner, someone that you could identify now and that would come now, what's the point in waiting? That's my pushback to people at the club when they say, we're quite happy to take our time, have Ollie or Carrick for 6 months. I don't fully get that if you knew the guy you wanted right now.
No, I agree. My only worry is they don't know what they're doing. They're like...
They could well do. They might not.
Yeah, they don't know. They don't have a plan. They thought maybe that it was going to work out, Ruben Amorim. By the time it realised it isn't, they were just like, right, we'll get an ex-player in to sort of steady this ship, and then, what we're going to do? Maybe we get Riola, maybe we get Silva or Glasner, or we could get a Tuchel. I think that they might not even know what they're doing, and there's no evidence to make me think they do.
Quickly though, I was just going to say on, sometimes the one of the debates in the group chats right now is the step up from, say, a Bournemouth, Fulham or Palace to United. And if I take it in one minor thing, I don't know if I came on and spoke about it, but there was that piece I did a while ago about how many interviews Amorim had done. It was 500 and odd in because every week you're doing about 25, 30 interviews.
Yeah.
And sometimes I see online, it's like, wow, the club need to nip that in the bud. No, they're all contractual agreements. They're not just putting him up for the sake of, they're all contractually obliged to do those interviews. You already see Sky can basically choose who they want. TNT for United are always on TV. All the international broadcasters. So you're doing all these interviews. Most weeks at Palace, in terms of like written media, Glasner's facing about 2 or 3 people. So he knows them because that's the same people that go. And there's a couple of weeks ago where one of them couldn't go, and it was a 1-to-1 with Athletic and Glasner. You're not going to get that at United. That I'm assuming Iraola's similar. It might be a handful at most that go to those press conferences, and the scrutiny is just different. You need to be able to handle the constant sort of scrutiny and media obligations, and everything's just... United are one of the biggest clubs in the world. They're in that Real Madrid, they're in that Barcelona mould of like, you're just going to be, everything you do is going to be psychoanalyzed to within it. Every still image, every time you leave the house, everything you say will be, poured over. And that's where I think someone like a Silva, Iraola, Glasner, any of those, it's a completely different beast. You're seeing it almost with Thomas Frank now. If at Brentford he was holding a Fulham Cup at a game, Brentford fans would be fuming. And maybe that would get picked up, Premier League might. Maybe that would. But he couldn't believe that he was being asked about holding an Arsenal Cup. He couldn't go. But again, Tottenham's kind of that one up, maybe one below like a United. But again, you're at a club now with much more interest, much more expectation, and a lot of managers can't handle that step up. So friends of mine who have got reservations about your Glasner, your Silva, your Iraola, I can understand it. I can.
No, I completely agree, because I have my reservations about those managers. I'm not going to pretend I don't. And also, we saw it with Moyes. Moyes, who was at Everton. Everton are a big club. They are. The size of the fan base, historically, any sort of metric you want to use, they are a big club. Are they size of United? No, not even really in that same sort of stratosphere, because United's just different, especially when you're taking over from Sir Alex Ferguson. And I spoke to people who sort of dealt with David Moyes. I was at his unveiling, and even at his unveiling, you could see he was a bit, can't believe this is happening. And he just never fully got to grips with some of that media stuff, some of that scrutiny, some of the things that came with being a Manchester United manager that's almost got nothing to do with actually managing the team and the club, but just the sort of responsibilities that you've got. I don't think he could believe what was going on, and that's a manager that had been at Everton for a decade. Which, and I'd argue Everton is bigger than Palace, Bournemouth, or Fulham. So I do worry about that, and I do get your point, Nave. I just want to talk a little bit about Darren Fletcher, because obviously he's come in for a couple of games. Was that just the ultimate no-brainer, do you feel, from the club? Like, here's a guy who just more or less just ticks every box you could want to tick if you want someone to come in short term, right now.
Yeah, I spent most of the season trying to get a sit down with Darren Fletcher, and the form was never quite good enough, and I think people at the club sort of thought, he's probably going to be the interim, so we don't want to, put him up or put him in front of a... And we tried before the FA Youth Cup. I said any chance he'll speak. Obviously, it's a massive tournament, and he's the under-18s coach. No, well, maybe we'll do it for the next round. And obviously the next round is later this month at home against Derby County, and by that point he's already been the interim, right? Yeah. So I think people were kind of at the club were quite keen to keep him out of sight a little bit, but he's a really good guy, and he. What were the other options? I know we've seen Chelsea go with the under-21s boss. I really like, say, Travis Binion, who assisted Fletcher, but I think the reaction to putting Fletcher in against Burnley compared to having Travis Binion would have been drastically different. And I like Trav, so...
You know more about that than most people, and that's not... I was a bit like, who? Travis Binion. Yeah, it's not a name that everyone knows. Everyone, of course, knows who Darren Fletcher is.
Exactly. So it was never going to be the other way around, even though, Fletcher leaning on Travis a lot, been helping Travis with the 21s. I'm part of that coaching staff, and obviously Travis has been helping a little bit with the 18s as well in recent weeks. I think that's been obviously gone under the radar. Not everyone's paying attention to the academy, but they've been having a very, very close relationship. So as soon as it became clear that Fletcher was going to take the team, I knew that Travis and Alan Wright would be with him. But yeah, I'm really chuffed. I mean, there's a podcast that he did with the club in the piece I did about Fletcher, where I referenced that in 2019 when he was sat in San Carlo in Manchester, that he said, my aim is to become Man United manager, and that's the pinnacle, that is the ultimate, and whether I get that chance I don't know, but I've just got to work and hopefully I get it. That was 2019 and we're now into 2026 and he finally got the chance. So I'm really chuffed for him. Even if it is just for 2 games and he never gets the opportunity again, still an incredible moment for him. Only a handful of people will ever get to say they've done that, or very, very few people will get to say they've done that. So kind of it was a complete no-brainer, as you said.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves Darren Fletcher. Loved him as a player, someone who sort of battled to sort of get himself into that team. And people used to criticise him a lot when he first started about Fergie's sort of love child and all this stuff. And I remember when he first played out of position as well. I think he was playing on the right wing and he's not a winger. And then he got to the point where he was essential to that team for quite a while, and always carries himself well whenever I've seen him in an interview. And he's got a good reputation. And a lot of people who spoke to, who've worked or know Darren Fletcher, like him and say good things about him. Sometimes that's not always the case. You'll get people who will be honest or just...
I remember in our Man United Confidential column, I put out earlier in the season that he got injured in a Legends game against Celtic and he had surgery on his knee, had some sort of cartilage damage, and within 24 hours of the surgery he was back at Carrington ready to take training, and they were like you all right? And he was like, nah, I'm just back to work, we've got 18s, we've got a game coming up, I'll be on the sideline in crutches. And I remember there was some sort of suggestion after that, like, Darren didn't quite understand why that was a story, really. They just thought, well, why are they bothered about that? And it was like, well, no, it paints you in a great light, really. But he didn't think it was that noteworthy. He just thought, I'm the manager of the 18s. That's my job, back to work. But 24 hours after having knee surgery, he was back at Carrington. I think a lot of people speak of just got a great work ethic. Like, he's not, the thing with ex-players is some people say they're getting handouts and they're getting, an easy way to the top. He's really putting in the yards. Took the 18s job like maybe McKenna had in the past and others, and he's quite happy to build his way up, and he'll end up getting a championship job, and he'll do what Carrick has done and others, and hopefully it works out for him. I really hope it does. It's always good to see good people do well, and he's a really, really thoroughly nice bloke whenever I've dealt with him.
That's good to hear, and that's sort of what I've heard from others as well. Should we be worried, Nath, as United fans, with where we're at the minute? Because you're Mr. Positive usually.
No, I'm going to say, yeah.
And I think we're looking at this, and we were here not that long ago with Ten Hag, and it was like, okay, this isn't really working. But then you had that optimism that this was different. This is Ineos's guy. This is this is a new direction of the club. This isn't just the Glazers, and this isn't just Joel and Avram, whatever. This is like Ineos with all their experts and their footballing people, and this is why this is going to work. And now, further down the line, and it hasn't worked out, and there's all these rumours and reports and stories about different sort of reasons it hasn't. It seems to get more and more deflating as a United fan. Do you think we should be worried, or do you think there's still hope that Ineos are going to get this together from what you've seen?
I'm just going to... My default setting is just positivity. Like, okay. I look at, say, a West Ham. That's a situation where I think like there's no hope there. That just feels like...
I think most West Ham fans agree with what I've seen.
I couldn't go on the West Ham version of this and then try and dress it. They look condemned. You know what I mean? There's nothing to cling on to. I look at United and go, right, this league isn't that good. Fundamentally, this league is not great. Aston Villa drawing at Crystal Palace. United went there and won. Even with all the points United have dropped, they're still in the mix for the top 4. Newcastle have been naff all season long. They get that very late Harvey Barnes.
I can't believe I saw they'd gone above us.
But my point being is like there's so many average teams that I don't think the Prem is that strong. And United are in a position where they haven't quite got going. There's been a lot of negativity around the results, particularly at home. Looking at it, we're going to get Ahmad back. You're going to get Mbeumo back. Mazraoui will come back into a good squad player. Sesko, you hope now that can kick him on. I mean, both finishes I thought were really good. Instinctive finishes. That's what you need. Bruno is Bruno. He's a machine. I don't know how he came back from his... somehow I think he pulled his hamstring. Didn't realise he pulled his hamstring and just carried on at Villa. I still can't get my head around that.
Maybe because it's him. Everyone else will be like, "Oh, that's me." He's like, "What's this funny feeling in my leg?"
He was like, "Nah, I'm fine, man. I'm fine." And I think there are players that are ascending. I think Alessandro Martinez has played really well in recent weeks. Not great for the second goal against Burnley, but Dorgy, he's better platformed as a forward player. Lacey, you hope now can get a little bit more minutes and can have the impact. So you've honestly, I don't know why you would bother going if you just thought it was the West Ham type situation. United are very much in contention to get Champions League football. They've removed unfortunately the divisive element. You've taken that away now. Are people going to keep talking about Amorim? I think I saw Ronaldo maybe tweet that you almost need to move past that now. It's not helpful. You're going to get some people that.
Ronaldo, by the way. Not Cristiano.
I'm not. Cristiano's not necessarily talking. No, you're Ronaldo.
Yeah.
That there will be some that want the results from here on in to fail, to go badly wrong, to prove a personal bias, to confirm that you should never have got rid of Amorim. Look what's happened, and who knows? It could go wrong. It could go really well. It could go really right. United could finish second or third if everything takes off now, and Ollie has a similar interim if it is him or Carrick, and Villa taper off City and not this major dominant force. You never know. United could go up, or they could absolutely plummet. Well, I don't know, but if you're adamant that it's only going to be that one, I don't know what to tell you, because at this point there's a lot of good players there. You've removed the element that was dividing the fan base. Do I have loads of faith in Ineos? No, but they're between Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and Michael Carrick. You could flip a coin on both of those. I really don't see one being drastically worse than the other. And then it's just to the summer, and then by that point they'll have hopefully figured out who they want as their head coach or manager. By then, who knows what they've decided. But all you can worry about now is the next 6 months. United can get Champions League football. They have the players to do it. They've got a top level striker. They've got the best player in the league in Bruno on his day. He's as good as anyone. You can go toe to toe.
Yeah, I agree with that. On his days.
Amad Diallo, got to find a place for him. One of the best isolated and wide players in the league. Lenny Yoro, I know he's an up and down season, but he's on your bench now. United have got options there, and I think it's probably not going to be major strengthening this month. So it is going to be what they've got right now. But if you don't believe United can get Champions League football in this season, where we were on telly waxing lyrical about a manager that's lost, well, not 1 in 12 or whatever Jamie Redknapp was. You need to go back and watch that clip, by the way. I love that so much.
Honestly, it's class.
You have to believe that, as bad as United have been in so many games, like the bottom of the table, they've barely beaten any of them, and yet they're still right there. So for me, I'm fairly optimistic going into the second half of the season that it can actually get a lot better.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Gonna hope
to end. We need a bit of optimism, Nate. I appreciate that. This is what we need, a bit of positivity. There's been a little bit of doom and gloom, and I don't think...
That's something people say, you just want it to go wrong. I don't. I want it to be incredibly successful, fingers crossed.
Would you rather be sort of commentating on us losing at Grimsby or recovering that, or would you rather be us in the Champions League?
Exactly.
Nice little trips to Barcelona or whatever, doing stuff like that.
I'd quite like to be looking out onto a beach in Barcelona in a lovely hotel, watching United play at the Camp Nou.
This is it. I miss the games. I miss the sort of being in those sort of in the mix with those kind of things. It does feel like it's been far too long. Well, it has been far too long. Nate, it's always great chatting to you. Keep up the great work. And it was so bad seeing, because I missed the bit on Friday where people were sort of trolling you and coming for you, and I just saw the bit on Monday when everyone was like, "You need to check out what Nathan Salt's been writing." He's been on it.
I was worried when that phone was buzzing that Adam McCullough picture was going to come back around, but it didn't. Thank God, that's been erased from the internet.
I think that might be my claim of fame that I took that picture. Steve's got the one of him he took the picture of Adam and Joe. Where Jesus showed me why I won't go to heaven. Yeah. And I think that might be my one. But go and check out Nate's work at the Mail. There's a link in the description. That's been Nathan Salt. I've been Jay Motty. This has been what we need a name for this, because you keep coming on.
There's some sort of therapy session, isn't it?
The therapy session. Yeah. I was going to earlier. You said a pinch of salt, but I thought that could work. But then would people think that if you're taking
don't listen to what I'm saying?
So
come on, Jay.
Yeah, we can't have that. But listen, it's always great chatting to you. That's been Nate. I'm Jay. This has been a one-on-one interview. Thanks for watching.